Hello, and thank you for joining in on this podcast revolving around the Texas government. Today we are focusing on an event that happened only just last year, and many of us, it's just a fading memory. What is this event? You may recall that last February we experienced one of the most intense and severe snowstorms in recent Texas history. The storm nearly put the Texas power grid to its knees and nearly even put the system entirely offline. If this happened, it would have taken almost a month to get the system back online. It would result in severe economic and loss of life not seen in modern society that goes along with natural disasters. Just to remind you that in the areas that did lose power in Texas, over 246 people died due to the lack of this preparedness. Let your imagination figure out what else might have happened if the power grid did completely shut off. Do you know how the power grid actually works? Many people are not aware of how the energy is actually received daily or how it's transported. Essentially, the power grid operates based on a balancing act, since it's not possible to store energy in an efficient manner. So all the power in the grid needs to be forecast and produced for the projected needs. If too little power is made, it strains the generators, and if demand is too high for what is being produced, it will cause the safety cutoffs at the facilities to shut down to save the equipment at the plant. With a huge need for power to heat the homes and businesses, we reached a peak of 76,819 megawatts of power usage during this event. But with solar and wind turbines having issues with snow and ice limiting output, and even one of our nuclear power plants that had issues with its coolant system that caused it to shut down, the price of natural gas also spiked 100 times the normal average. A total grid collapse would just be the worst disaster in all, I would argue, of U.S. history.
With an average American, most people don't think ahead when a power source is down because why would they? They keep their bills paid. The problem is that companies don't think ahead to maintain the generators that led to 246 people dying from a lack of reliable heat source. The issue that I have is that even though Texas is a state that's considered hot and warm for most of the season, why weren't they considering how much temperatures could drop during the winter? Most Texans don't have a source to keep their houses warm because of how hot the state is. The Texas power generators should have been regulated better to make sure everyone had enough power to contain heat during the freeze. Solar panels seem to be a good alternative to the traditional power source. Power panels are, if you don't know, are energy that is used from the sun to the panels on top of a house to provide power to homes. I investigated prices for solar energy to see if they're affordable for the average household, but it turns out they could cost in between $8,000 to $15,000. It's a little bit too pricey for people who don't have as much disposable income or live paycheck to paycheck. The upside is if you can afford it, that it can still provide energy by the sun's solar rays during if it's raining, cloudy, and the panels can even be used during the winter and still have the energy to power the panel. The only downside is that if the weather is not great, the power won't be as strong, and depending on how much you want your house to have the solar energy, you have to put in even more money for the solar panels. I don't think we should have to rely on supplying our own power supplies. I think the state should provide stronger generators so we don't even have to worry about freezing to death. What do you think, Pete?
In my personal experience, the winter can get very cold, but usually unlikely like the 2021 freeze. My family and I were without water for a while and without power for like a day, and that's because we're in South Texas. So I got very lucky. My family and I, ended up with power and didn't have to be without it for more than just one day. We deal with a lot of health issues, and that would have been really bad. But a couple of blocks over, they were without power for days on end. So the only thing that was unlucky for us was that the pipes burst due to them freezing, and I was without power and water for a couple of days. I think the city should require certain pipes that won't freeze or burst. So PEX pipes would be a great alternative for homes and buildings instead of PVC pipes because they are more durable during the winter. And also now here in Texas, where it doesn't get as cold as the north, It's now unpredictable, and we should now just take precaution and replace pipes with PEX instead of PVC. Black ice is also a big issue. Black ice is when the roads are wet and really frozen. So in this condition can cause a lot of car accidents and being in dangerous situations. And that can prevent us from people going out and getting water, especially if pipes are broken and they have bursted. So again, the PEX pipes can prevent having to go out in dangerous winter conditions, and they're very, cost effective.
The 2021 freeze taught us that we need to hook up to the rest of the country's supply of electricity just in case there's another freeze. We're connected to Mexico and the Eastern power grid, but they can't transfer enough power to all of Texas. So the best idea, in my opinion, would to be to hook up to the Western power grid. It serves a population already of 80 million people. Overall, the legislature failed to provide any relief to Texans who were devastated by the storm. A Senate amendment that would have provided direct relief aid to Texans was ultimately stripped out. Lawmakers did, however, manage to pass $6.5 billion in state bonds to stabilize natural gas and electric utilities that were hit by huge price spikes. Working in utilities as well, I saw firsthand a lot of the damage that was done during the freeze. There was a lot of busted pipes. Like Pete said, there was a lot of things that were going on, and it does also affect natural gas and costed millions. But I think that
Talking about this subject does very little politically unless viewers like you contact the local and state government that affects these vital issues. Start off by contacting ERCOT and the Texas Railroad Commission to lobby for change in their investigations on the winterization efforts of the power grid. You can also look up your local state rep and send in a letter or call in to show your concern regarding the vulnerability of the Texas power grid and to encourage the implementation of more regulations that benefit the safety of the public good.